I started having out-of-body experiences when I was 12. At the beginning, they were spontaneous, they were involuntary. I really didn't know what I was doing or what type of an experience I have. So I didn't know if there was a name, if other people did it, if everybody did it. And then after that, I started having some very infrequently, maybe like once a year. And it wasn't until I was about 17 that I read the first book on out-of-body experiences. And they already were suggesting a technique. So I started trying it a little bit more with techniques. And by the time I was 23 or so, I found my colleagues at the IAC, and they had already pulled a lot of information together. And then my out-of-body experiences took off even further. I was very sure it was something real, yes, even from the first one. The first one happened due to a computer, I guess. At that time, in the 80s, I had a computer. I was starting really to learn to program, and maybe because it was something more intellectual, that afternoon, I went to sleep in my bed. I was sleepy, but then after maybe like a half an hour or 40 minutes, I was aware, again, thinking about the program that I wanted to design with my hands on the keyboard. And after a few seconds, I guess, it sort of like dawned on me, didn't I go to sleep? And then the moment that I turned around to look at my bed and, in the direction where my body should be, I saw my physical body, and it surprised me, and I came into my physical body and immediately woke up, and I knew very clearly, I was over there, but I was over here. But I was over there, but I was over here. I really didn't understand what had happened, but I was very, very clear that, this was not a dream. Many of those things, we cannot describe them because the language that we have here, right, whichever language happens to be, has the words to describe the physical reality. Sometimes something that I say that is very, that might give the idea faster is, related even to the senses, we see because it's a certain range of, light wavelengths. And then we have colors for all of these wavelengths. But then outside the body, the astral body doesn't limit itself to the same limits as the physical body. So then outside the body, we can see more colors. But for those other colors that, are outside of our normal range of perception, we just don't have the words for them. And then you come back and you can visualize it in your mind. You understand it in your mind, but you cannot explain it to anybody. Sometimes we say it's almost like trying to explain to somebody who's blind from birth the color blue. And then we just simply don't have words to describe the color blue. We have to see it. We are actually having an experience when we are having an out-of-body experience, a real experience, outside of our body, as the phrase says. So while we are outside the body, you can observe, for example, the physical reality pretty much in real time, and you can see what is happening there. If you look at yourself, you realize that you're wearing, or you're using, I guess, what people usually call an astral body. A body that looks exactly like your physical body to the most minute detail, even, a little scar that you might have from when you fell and broke your arm as a kid, the astral body has that. And you can go and see the real physical dimension, reality, which helps us also to confirm, by the way, the out-of-body experiences. Something I did once when I was a teenager, even though I knew I was clear that I was having out-of-body experiences, I wanted sort of like to have more of a verification or a proof of that. So something that I did is I remember I left my body and I went, it's very simple, really, anybody can do it, but I went maybe like 3 or 4 blocks away from my house, and I wanted to see in the middle of the night the cars that were parked there, the colors of the cars, and then I tried to memorize the license plate of one of them. And then I came back to my body, and then here you had the 17-year-old in his pajamas walking at 2 a.m. in the morning, to go verify, the cars. And when I arrived, it was exactly the same cars and exactly the same license plate. So when you're having an out-of-body experience, you can see, what is happening in the physical reality, but the physical people normally cannot perceive you simply because the physical eye and the physical ear are not tuned to the astral body. They really cannot see you. Our 5 senses are not able to perceive, the non-physical reality. Now, sometimes there are people who have a little bit of clairvoyance or a little bit of clairaudience, and then a little more intuition, and then they might be able to perceive or sense something. And it happens from time to time, but in most of the cases, people are not able to see you. Yes, almost the same. Obviously, there isn't the near-death part, so the reason why you left the body is not because your physical body died. And there are some near-death experiences that don't have the out-of-body experience component. So there are some people who die and they only see their body, or they are unconscious for a while and then they resuscitate. But most of the times, or in a lot of the times, they have the out-of-body experience component, and then they describe, the tunnel or a bright light. They go to some other dimension. They meet certain relatives of theirs. They come back. Many times also in the out-of-body experience, a field, we call the near-death experience a forced out-of-body experience.
I was a young man in my early 20s, and I decided to come back here. I wasn't done with the reason I had been here. I clearly remember squeezing down, getting smaller, and coming into my body. It was like slamming back into the pain of this existence. So I come back, at that time, a college student studying mechanical engineering and physics. I come back into this life and I go on with that career, but they're teaching me Newtonian physics. They're teaching me that this is 3D is it. And I'm always, from the beginning, from then on, I'm on the other side. No, there's all the rest of this energy. There's all the rest of this out here.
There are a lot of different conventional theories for why people are reporting out-of-body experiences. One is that, yes, for example, the experiments of Olaf Blank, and other different individuals, where they put a camera and they're transmitting to your eyes, another perspective of yourself, and then people describe that they are feeling as if they were outside their body. Or sometimes there are certain experiments in which they stimulate a certain area of the brain and people describe an experience that could be like an out-of-body experience. And actually, I would say all of that is fine. It's just that that doesn't mean that the real out-of-body experience doesn't exist. So sometimes we say, you can stimulate the brain, and sometimes people start smelling, for example, the smell of lemon. And that's certainly an experiment that can be done. But the fact that you can, that by stimulating the brain, you can smell lemon, doesn't deny the fact that the actual lemon really exists. It just simply means that it's another way of, having the smell of lemon in your head. Maybe some of those theories explain some accounts on out-of-body experiences, but the actual full out-of-body experience, what we see, all the evidence that we have, it's an objective, or as an objective experience as there is. You leave the body, you can see, again, the physical reality in real time, observe it, know things, learn things that you didn't know before. There's also a few other things. For example, many of those theories have a hard time explaining what happens when two people leave the body, you meet outside the body, you have a common experience, even very far away from your five senses, and then you come back and you both remember it. And then those type of theories are not able to, account for that, the joint out-of-body experiences. Several experiments have actually already been done with this. Even us at the ISC, we have this course, this experiment, this research activity that we do. We call it the projective field, where basically we have about 50, 60 people lying in the ballroom of a hotel room, and they're supposed to leave their body, go to another little room in the hotel room, in another wing of the hotel room, where we have put a laptop that just simply generates a random image and displays it on the screen. And outside of the room, there is an auditor, somebody that is not associated with the ISC. Usually it's a college professor or a journalist, somebody that has some authority. So the people in the ballroom, they leave their body, they go, they try to see the image, they come back, then we give them a form, they describe what they saw. We take this form to the auditor, who signs it, sort of like certifying, attesting that he received all these forms before opening the door, and then we go in and we compare. And we have already had success with that, that shows that the person was somehow perceiving it. It doesn't mean it necessarily happened through an out-of-body experience, but certainly it was a non-physical or some mechanism of perception that went beyond the five senses, like remote viewing, maybe an intuition. Really, there can be several possibilities, but definitely not the five senses.
the brain is just like a television set. It's a receiving station. The consciousness exists outside the body. If you think about your consciousness as existing outside of your body, but telling itself that the locus of your consciousness is in your head, so then you're going to experience everything inside the body, then you can see how easy it is to go out of body.
The out-of-body experiences show that, certainly, that we are not the brain, that we go beyond the brain. It is interesting sometimes when you are outside the body, just in a very simple experience, for example, looking at your physical body lying in bed and sleeping, and you realize my brain is there, keeping all of my vital functions alive, but my brain has no idea what I am doing right now. And then I can go and experience and learn and observe so many things that my brain actually doesn't know, and will only know if, when I come back to my physical body, I decide to download the information from the astral body into my brain, which many times I do, of course, but sometimes you might not want to. Then the brain still doesn't know. Doesn't mean that the information is lost, because when you go outside the body the next time, you can remember it. It's in the astral body, simplifying here a little bit. So we are much more than the brain. The brain is certainly a very complex organ, not to put it down at all, but it seems to be more the receiver of consciousness. All of these experiences show us that, than really being the producer. It's an assumption that conventional science, has, and the neurobiology has, that, consciousness is a product of our biochemistry, but really something that hasn't been proven, either or against, certainly. So the evidence on the near-death experiences, like even Alexander and many other people, Raymond Moody, Parnia, etc., all of that evidence shows or starts to hint at the fact that the brain is really more the receiver of consciousness than really the producer.
My doctors were right. I was extremely ill from this and should not have survived at all, and should not have had any experience at all, much less any memories of experience. When I did come back, my brain was wrecked. No words, no language, no recognition of any of those beings around the hospital bed. My mother, sisters, sons. Absolutely no clue what this universe was. But I knew where I'd been. I remembered completely, full well, the journey I was returning from, even though I remembered absolutely nothing during any part of it of Eben Alexander's life before coma. Now, the important thing to understand is that Gateway Valley was much more real than this world. Far sharper, crisper, and more real than this. This is very dreamlike by comparison. That was a deep, deep mystery to me for a long time, trying to understand that ultra reality. It's very hard to put it into words. Later on, when I was trying to explain all this, and my original default was this had to be some crazy brain effect, some wild hallucination or drug effect or dream. That's what I was trying to explain it as. But after many, many months and going over all this with my doctors and everything, we came to realize, well, it was way too real to be real because it really happened. But it didn't happen in my brain, and it didn't happen in the physical universe. It was a much deeper clue about the nature of all existence, and in many ways confirmed tens of thousands of other near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative experiences, not to mention the writings of religious mystics and prophets and those writing about the afterlife going back thousands of years, because we're all talking about the same thing. No neuroscientist on earth can give you the first sentence, not even a sentence, to explain how the physical brain might create consciousness. And it's not because we haven't done enough research. The 1990s were the decade of the brain, and Obama has recently earmarked a significant amount of federal funding to additional study the brain. The more we study the brain, the more we realize it does not create consciousness.
Yes, in terms of conventional science, certainly many scientists are not too fond of the out-of-body experiences, let's put it that way. Some of them are. Some of them, are a little bit more open. They certainly start to see the amount of evidence and the amount of accounts that is building up, and they see, look, something must be happening. Maybe it's not their specialty, but at least they are willing to, how could I say, hear what could be other theories or the reasons why that is happening to so many people, including the near-death experience. Now, certainly, what happens is that science, to a certain extent, is a very good tool, very, very good tool. I myself am a chemist, so I am partial to science. What happens is that science is performed and is done by scientists, and scientists are human beings. And us human beings, we are not as objective as science is. So yes, sometimes certain human beings, certain scientists, sometimes they are afraid. Sometimes, in the case of some individuals, sometimes it just goes against all of their conditioning and training that they have ever had. It implies a lot of things about consciousness and the nature of consciousness, and also there is also, I don't know if a risk or a fear, not necessarily of the non-physical reality, but there is a risk or a fear of them that the work that they are doing all of a sudden is less meaningful. And this you see in academic and in universities all the time. There is a scientist with a theory, and he has been doing research on that theory, for 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden a new theory comes about that is basically going to retire him early or put his idea and all of his work, to the side. And then the person fights it to that, with its life, the new theory, even though the new theory is conventional, is proven, there is evidence, it explains better a lot of things, and we are not even talking about out-of-body experiences. So many of them, sometimes the fear of some of them, I would say, is that it might mean that their work, with the out-of-body experiences, might be shown to be incomplete or less important. And then here comes the human aspect. Look, then I'm going to defend my work. I'm going to defend the 20, 30 years of my life. Sometimes because people are interested in precisely that, how real is it? I sometimes put the question to them, if I were to ask you, do you believe in your hand, what would you say? I would say most people are actually even confused by that question, because even if you say, yes, I believe in my hand, it's a little strange, to say that you believe in your hand, because our hand is it's a reality, something that we experience every day, and then to put it in the category of belief is a little strange. So it's a certainty. And some people haven't had them, yes. That's why we say, one of the best ways for you to verify for yourself or to prove, that this is happening is for you to have an out-of-body experience, and then they can see themselves outside their body. This is exactly a big part of what we do. We give classes and we help people to develop their out-of-body experiences. And then there are many techniques. Really, we go through maybe 30, 40 in our classes. In my book, I have about 15 or so. I would say one of the biggest keys towards having the out-of-body experience is for people to develop a good condition in their energetic system. So we have the physical body, we have the energetic system, which is the basis of acupuncture, and then we have the astral body. And then the astral body is connected to the physical body by these energies. And if we can do exercise for this energetic system and keep it in good shape, more flexible, more loose, then it becomes easier to control the disconnection from the body, and many of the other out-of-body techniques work better. Many people certainly end up having it. What we see is basically anybody can learn how to have an out-of-body experience. It's a matter of training, really, like anything in life, like learning how to ride a bicycle or play a musical instrument. It's a matter of receiving some information, dedication, a little bit of effort, and the capacity goes on developing little by little. So it's really up to the person training enough, certainly, so as to be able to have the out-of-body experience. There are always some people that are saying, look, don't leave the body because of a lot of reasons. I have even read some of the things in certain books, older books and everything. We don't see that. We see actually that leaving the body, separating from the body is pretty safe. So there are many things that are said, specifically with the one of not being able to come back. What we observe is actually the opposite. Many times people leave the body. Once they are outside the body, they realize, here I am floating. I don't need to eat. I don't feel pain. I don't feel hunger. I don't need to go back to work. Sometimes their conclusion at that moment is, I'm staying here. I don't want to go back. And you can't. There are certain mechanisms that are going to bring you into the body even if you don't want to. So many times it's the opposite. People want to stay and they're not able to because there are some mechanisms, an energetic biological mechanism that at the end of the day is going to bring you back even if you don't want to. So even if you're lost in the sense that you don't know where you are, you're going to come back to the body after a few minutes and return again even if you don't want to. So we always come back. What we observe is certainly that people disconnect from their body every night. We don't go that far, but when we disconnect from the body, we stay floating above the body maybe a couple of inches or 4 inches, 5, 10 centimeters, something like that. And this varies from night to night and from person to person. So at a very personal level, many people have felt the sensations of this transitional state, especially when we are falling asleep at night or waking up in the morning, or we wake up in the middle of the night. So some of the sensations that are more common is the falling sensation, that we dream, I guess, or we feel that we are falling, and then we wake up with a little jerk or a little jolt. This is very common and just shows that we were a little bit disconnected. Other people, sometimes they describe how they hear these sounds around their head, that they can be very loud, like an engine, like a turbine, like a zzz, very, very loud, or like a dry sound, like a pack, tack, crack. Sometimes also people get woken up by these vibrations. We call it the vibrational state. It feels as if internally we are like in a mini earthquake. And from this condition, people end up having an out-of-body experience. Or the very famous, or infamous, I should say, because it many times scares people, the sleep paralysis, that people in the middle of the night, they feel that they cannot move their physical body. Usually people enter into a panic. And that mainly happens because the two bodies are, even though the person woke up in the physical body, the two bodies are not fully aligned yet, and then we don't have the ability to move the muscles the way we usually do. This is one of the things that is the hardest to understand. Sometimes I even say, in our classes, just understanding time here in the physical reality is already hard, even though time is very constant, very stable here in the physical reality, relatively stable. And then when you go to outside the body and you are in other dimensions, depending on the reality that you're in, time starts to lose its meaning. It has like a different concept there. And space as well, so you can travel, long distances in a very short time, you arrive at other places. So it just simply behaves differently. Inside the body, we need an address to be able to get somewhere, and those are references. But outside the body are references. First of all, you get to different places with your will, thinking, focusing on the target, and you arrive. And usually, when you focus on a target, what you're relying on is on your memories. So for example, let's say that you want to go visit your sister who's right now in the south of France. So what you focus on her, but by focusing, you're really trying to remember what you know about her. And then the moment that you focus on her a little bit more intently, the astral body starts to slide in that direction, and you arrive at your sister, whether you were 1 block away or whether you were here in California, on the other side of the world. You can see this is people in out-of-body experiences, just like in near-death experiences, that almost all of them, I wouldn't say all of them, but almost, a very big majority, describe how they are seeing or how they encounter certain relatives or dear friends of them that had already passed away. The same thing happens outside the body. Actually, it's interesting sometimes giving classes in different parts of the world, again, Germany, Brazil, in Latin America, to see the main objectives of different people. For example, Hispanics usually, one of the main reasons why they want to develop their out-of-body experiences is because of this. They want to leave the body and they want to make contact with their deceased relatives so as to make sure that they are okay. Sometimes for other cultures, like here in the US, the main objective is another one. And also terminally ill patients that are already, their physical body is already very weak. Many of them describe how they are sort of like in and out, leaving their body and coming back in. And they many times describe seeing also relatives of theirs that are sort of like waiting for them and that they see them. They look sometimes a little bit different, yes. One of the main differences, I guess, is, sometimes they look a little bit more transparent, so to speak, and also they don't have, any connection, any silver cord that connects them to their physical body. But I would say the main difference is not so much in how they look, but it's more than anything that you feel that they are no longer having a physical life. I know that this might sound very abstract, especially for us that we're used to the physical reality and we rely so much on the sense of vision. But outside the body, you rely a lot more on the intuition, on sort of like reading of the energetic information. And then when you meet them, you realize this person is not having a physical life, and you're perceiving this in the energetic information, in the vibe that they are putting out, which is different from projectors when we are outside the body. Definitely outside the body, you can go to different dimensions or realities, really different planes of existence, and you can travel to several of them, or spiritual planes, as certain people like to call it. Some of them are a little bit similar to the physical reality. You see structures, you see people going about their businesses, and sometimes having different types of activities. Some things are already different. Sometimes in some places, I mentioned how here in the physical life we have this phenomena of night and day, because we live in planet Earth, which spins about its axis, and at certain moments we're looking at the sun, and other moments we aren't. And then in all of these other dimensions, the reality is not arranged in night and day. So there isn't gravity in it. There isn't this condition of, moving around something. So life stays active the entire time. The physical reality conditions us a lot to the physical reality. We're very used to shapes, to very specific and concrete forms and everything. And then it's definitely hard for the physical brain to think about certain things. There are certain things when I have out-of-body experiences that when I come in, I don't remember, I don't understand, but the next time I leave my body, outside the body, I realize, but I already knew this, and my brain wasn't able to understand it. And it takes me maybe 4 or 5 experiences to come back with that information to the brain before the brain can get it. Okay, now I got it. But it's just because the brain is so already used to these references, to the physical references, that are not the references that you find outside the body. As you start to go to what we would describe, higher dimensions or more evolved dimensions, the amount of objects start to disappear. So there are no longer chairs, there are no longer buildings, there are no longer walls, and all of this to a certain extent makes sense, in the sense that, for example, the astral body doesn't get tired. So really we don't need chairs ever. But in many dimensions there are chairs, and then up to a certain moment it's almost as if the individuals in that reality, they understood we really don't need chairs. And then that object starts to disappear, and you no longer see it in all of the other dimensions. The same thing with walls or with a roof. There is no weather, so really there's no need to have this. But you still see it in several dimensions, and past a certain point you don't see it anymore. And then they start to have a lot less objects, and sometimes for us, maybe used to the physical reality, this might seem also a little abstract, a little strange. So there are, for example, dimensions where you don't see any ground. Just everything is sort of like floating in space, in what seems like a grayish, whitish, environment, so to speak. And there's nowhere to fall. It's not like you can look down and, you see the ground below. No, there is nothing in that dimension, or nothing to give you a reference of where is down. What happens is that there are many dimensions, and then, there are certain dimensions in which the individuals who live in those realities, they are a little bit more confused. They really don't have a lot of skills, we could say. And then they have a hard time sometimes understanding what is happening with them, first of all, and being able to see the physical reality. Or go to the physical reality, even find the physical reality. So those individuals, usually they're not able to see us. But there are several other dimensions when individuals start to have more awareness and more skills, that yes, they can come and see us and see, what is happening in the physical reality. Certainly, we find these individuals that are more evolved, more developed, benign, positive, and want to help us. And we have given them, a lot of names, right? So spirit guides, masters, illuminated beings, us human beings with all of our cultures, and all of our societies, we have given them so many names. So you do find them outside the body. You can communicate with them. You can consult things with them. And they are certainly, in many instances, sort of like keeping an eye on what is happening here in the physical reality and trying to help, trying to contribute. What I see, what I understand, and many of my colleagues, and for all the evidence that we see, is that we are here in this physical life to develop some skills, to learn, really. So I many times say that it's almost like a kid that goes to school, and during its school day, it's going to have experiences, learn different things, etc. But at the end of the school day, he's going to go back home where he comes from, and he's hopefully going to prepare the homework for the next school day. So the physical life is like the period in which we are in school, to come and do things and, try to implement things, try to develop things. So I definitely, even though I have had a lot of out-of-body experiences, I get along well with the non-physical reality, I want to stay in this physical reality, and I have a lot of projects and a lot of things that I want to do, that I still want to accomplish. But whenever it happens that it's my time to, to go, hopefully 100, I'll go happily. But for now, I want to stay here and, focus on it for a reason, for a purpose. And we see this actually when we have out-of-body experiences, because many times this is a very big question. People are asking themselves, what am I here to do? What did I come here to do? What is my life mission? What is my life task? And what we see when we have out-of-body experiences is that many people, before being born, they are planning their main goals, their main projects, their main purposes, lessons in the case of some individuals. So you realize with the out-of-body experience, just like it happens with the people who have near-death experiences, that once you are outside the body, you can get a glimpse, an idea of what was that purpose, and then you come back and you try to realize it, to concretize it. It's a little harder. It's because the physical reality is less malleable. It's more stiff, more hard. So in order to, even in order to create a chair, then you're going to need some tools and hard tools and everything, while outside the body, the reality is a lot more malleable, more easily transformed, and then it becomes much faster. Here in the physical reality, we can train more our will, our perseverance, our discipline, because outside the body, things are very quick, very, very quick. And here, everything slowed down, and then we have the opportunity to, test things and to see really what is it that we want, or, really put energy, effort in order to materialize that, and then that helps us for the other realities as well. Yes, I think people would act differently, and they do act differently once they have out-of-body experiences, because they realize, they are certainly much more than just simply a physical body. That things are much deeper than what it seems. Usually those individuals, they become a little bit more humane, more ethical. They try to help other people more. They start to see how connected we are. So because of that, they want to try to contribute more to society. Maybe they think less, what's in it for me. So all of those things are positive, sure. There's nothing wrong with having money. There's nothing wrong with living a comfortable life. And even further, I would say, I think that this life, even though we're learning, even though sometimes certain things take a lot of effort and, can be very challenging, I think that we should enjoy it. Sometimes what happens is that maybe the mentality is a little different. When we were in third grade and they would give us homework, or they would put us the entire day to try to finish an assignment, the kid, of course, complains. He thinks, man, another assignment. So it's like a suffering for the little kid. But now that we are adults, with the mentality of an adult, we think about the third grade, and what do we think? Usually we think that the third grade was great. It was probably one of the best times of our life, and I wish I was back there, again doing those things. So our mentality now is more developed. So sometimes the out-of-body experience gives you that perspective, and then we realize, look, physical life can be enjoyed, can be very, very good, very positive, you know, helping other people or doing good by society or trying to become a better person or trying even to work ethically doesn't need to be suffering. I mean, we certainly many times to improve ourselves, to develop ourselves, we have to put effort. We have to, you know, apply ourselves. But this doesn't have to be suffering. It can be very enjoyable. I, for example, you know, when I was a teenager also, I used to be a swimmer. I used to swim a lot. And I, you know, in order to improve my time, I had to put effort. I have to dedicate time. But I loved it. I wanted to go. I wanted to train more. So it wasn't anything that I would see as, you know, even though sometimes my muscles would hurt, the entire activity wasn't a suffering activity. It was a very good activity. I don't know if right now, I think that we're all improving, certainly. Maybe a lot of those things sometimes they're done because of marketing reasons, you know. In 3 months, we're gonna already reach a stage in which everybody's going to be, or, you know, sometimes there are all of these periods related to a lot of different cultures, right? So Maya in the 2012, then, you know, the blue moon that happened now a couple of weeks ago, that the moon was as closest to the Earth as it has been since, I don't remember, 19-something, and then people always try to attach significance to that, and to a certain extent it is significant. But I think that in terms of awareness or of consciousness, we are certainly developing, but it's still going to take a while. You know, we're still pretty far. We still have a lot of work to do. You know, when you look at ecology, the planet, distribution of resources, we still have a lot of things to do. Sometimes I see very positive things like the internet. Even we couldn't anticipate the impact that the internet was going to have right now, not even 10 years ago, not even 15 years ago. And because of that, it's very hard to anticipate. In 10 years, what is it that we're going to be using that we cannot live without? Difficult to say. Difficult to say. I know quantum mechanics is probably one of the most advanced tools and one on the edge of science that we have at this moment. And naturally, I can see the intention of my colleagues, of scientists, you know, to try to use the most advanced thing that they know to try to explain what they don't know at this moment. It's very valid. It's just that, you know, I don't know if we are that close that quantum mechanics is already going to bridge the gap. Because sometimes I start to think, even with the out-of-body experience, it seems to me that maybe we could be missing 10 more steps that could take, you know, 10 more theories. In 10 years, maybe another theory that, you know, goes beyond quantum mechanics is going to arrive, is going to be very popular, and people are going to think that that's the one. But maybe in 40 more years, another one is going to arrive. So I don't know really how many more steps are there. Could it be quantum mechanics? It could be. I am just not so sure. I think that we probably still have many more steps to go from a conventional perspective to completely bridge with the non-physical reality and spirituality. I can see a lot of correlations already, but I think we're still a little far.
What's important about quantum mechanics is that it's the best physical theory that we have. It describes the physical world as accurately as any theory that we've been able to develop so far. So we're physical creatures, we live in a physical world. Physics has to be compatible, at least, with the kinds of phenomena we're talking about. So if somebody claims that they can project their mind somewhere and get information from a distance, physics has to allow that, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So somewhere about 100 years ago, a little bit more now, the idea of multiple dimensions came along. And so people doing my kind of work suddenly became very interested in the possibility that there are other dimensions here. Like you go to CERN, for example, and talk to the particle physicists who are beginning to figure out, based on things like the standard model in physics, how do we explain why, when you mash together a bunch of protons or neutrons, why do you get the result that you get, this bunch of particles? Well, some of those theories require that you'd need more than 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time in order to describe it. So that's how you begin to find at these other dimensions.
There's a lot of room for a lot of afterlife and a lot of different levels out there. But the materialist scientists who only want 3D, they won't look at it. They won't even, they say, no, it's a bunch of baloney. They don't even look. They just say, no good, impossible, I'm not even gonna look at it. Well, how do they know it's impossible? They see 4% of the universe and the rest of it's impossible. But that's ridiculous. We have to remember that it's not in our 4%. We can't know it all yet. But we're now at a point where we are making beachheads on a new territory, those other dimensions.
Starts to become so much more complex than what we initially anticipated. So quantum mechanics has helped us to understand a lot of things, the behavior of subatomic particles, all of that. But there are so many unknowns that we don't just simply, when we start talking, for example, about dark matter, or even more obscure dark energy, from a physical perspective, I am not even sure that quantum mechanics even can start to touch that. So as we start to go a little bit more into those fields, we might need to develop, new theories to try to understand that, or new tools to try to understand that. And as we understand that, I don't know if we're going to find another reality that we, at that moment, are not going to understand, and then we always keep on going.